This is our first in-person meeting of the San Diego City Council Reinvestment Task Force in about 3 years. So welcome. It's good to see everyone without seeing you on a screen. And I want to also thank the San Diego Housing Commission staff for your work in getting today's meeting together. I'd like to remind all of the task force members that we do need to use our mics. We are being recorded, so let's make sure that we use those. And I will call this meeting of the San Diego City County Reinvestment Task Force to order at 2:03 p.m. on May 25th, 2023. I am City Council President Pro Tem Monica Montgomery Stepp, and also, more importantly, the District 4 representative on the City of San Diego. And I'm pleased to co-chair the RTF with San Diego County District 2 Supervisor Joel Anderson, who will be here shortly. The Reinvestment Task Force for the public this is an official joint city and county commission to foster increased financial inclusion and advanced economic justice. We do have a quorum, and so I would then now turn to the clerk to provide instructions for today's public participation in today's meeting with regard to non-agenda public comment. You have a clerk for Daisy.
Where is it? Speak? Thank you, Madam Chair. I just sent her downstairs to get our other chair. And so if she had any speaker slips, I think she would have given to me, but maybe if she does, we can return back to that item.
Yes, no problem at all. We can return back if there are any non-agenda public comment at this time. So then we will now turn to item number 3, and that is an opportunity for our task force members to give us any updates or make any comments at this time. Do we have anyone that would like to make a comment? Yes, Stephen.
There we go. Thank you. No, just a couple things that we have going on at the Federation I wanted to share because they are relevant here. One is our School of Affordable Housing program, where we're training folks in property management and affordable housing. We've had several cohorts at MiraCosta College. We've worked with Southwestern, and we are expecting a year from now to be at ECC with the program. So we're very excited. Challenged actually with the level of response that folks have, the number of students who wanted to come into the program, but we have gotten a number of them already placed in the sector. The second thing I want to call out, and well, Ali is here, maybe I'm stealing his thunder, but we're working really closely with National Development Council on a Developers of Color training program. Very pleased to have 5 of my board members actually participating as steering committee members, and we are looking at classes beginning in August, a 5-day training for local individuals who want to learn how to become developers and to begin to develop the development community of color. And so I'm really pleased to be a part of that, and thanks to Ali's Bank for, well, it's not really Ali's Bank. so to Ali Chase Bank for their support.
Aren't even a cog, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? I just want to quickly update the task force. We had talked about this a little bit, but I do serve on the California Reparations Task Force. We have been meeting for 2 years. The bill that established the task force, of course, was authored by then Assembly Member Dr. Shirley Weber, who is now Secretary of State. And so we have been convening since June of 2021. We had 2 years to put together a proposal for the state legislature, but also to get expert testimony that will inform our entire report. We issued an interim report of about 500 pages last year in June per the statute of AB 3121. And on June 29th, we will be handing over the official report along with all of the recommendations over to the state legislature in Sacramento. So it's a very exciting time. Just want to say here that there's been a lot of news about a particular piece of the proposal, and that is the compensation piece. But there are 5 categories of reparations. We modeled it after the UN, the international definition of reparations. And those 5 categories are assurance of non-repetition, so that's where a lot of our policy recommendations come in, restitution and repatriation, compensation, which we've heard about, satisfaction, and rehabilitation. So there are 5 different categories. It's going to be a very vast discussion. But stay tuned, and if anyone's up in Sacramento on June 29th, please let me know. We'd love for you to be a part of this, the last hearing that we will have. So that's all I have. If there are no other comments from our task force members, we will move on to item number 4. And at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the February 21st, 2023 meeting. I have a motion. Do I have a second? And I have a second. And if there is no further discussion, we will now take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Do we need to abstain if we weren't here in the last meeting?
The only thing I would say is if it were recorded and you watched it, then no. But if not, then you can abstain.
Okay, I'll abstain.
Okay, awesome. So we have all ayes, 1 abstention, so that motion passes. And
Sorry, I'll also abstain.
okay, no problem. Okay, no problem. So we have 2 abstentions and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 yays. So thank you very much. That motion passes. So let's go on now to our staff report, and I will turn it over to Daisy to report item number 5.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and hello, everybody. It is really, really good to see you, and all of our guests, too. One note, so on June 29th, we are very bummed that you are not going to be here because that is our rescheduled RTF meeting when we were hoping to hear the report on reparations task force. So we will bring that back later, and all y'all will have to decide which meeting you attend. If you're going to be in Sacramento or come down here. No competition. No. Speaking of the June 29th meeting, hello, Supervisor. Supervisor's office had a great suggestion that we weren't able to put together for this meeting, but we're looking to put together for the June 29th meeting, and that is the issue of zero interest loans for the Islamic community. I think most people are familiar with that, but it's something we've never dove into. And once your office suggested it, it was like, oh, why haven't we looked at this and really heard about the implications and what's being done and what are the alternative products and what can be done. So if you have, we already have several speakers, but not several. I should say we have 2 or 3 really good speakers. But if there are people who are experts or have ideas that we should know about, please send them my way. And I'm going to be sending a note out to all of our bank members to ask, is there a position, anything you've done? Are there products, or is there nothing yet? It's in process. If we could do a hearing on that. Welcome and hello.
Thank you very much. I have a large population who, by their faith, cannot pay interest. And I wanted to make sure that nobody was left behind. And I was really hoping that we'd come up with some strategies to help those communities, even if it were a pilot program, and perhaps we just started an evergreen fund or something along those lines. So thank you so much for your consideration and bringing it forward.
Thank you for this. And yeah, I was so glad you mentioned it, and I sort of skipped straight to the punchline and forgot to explain the why for anybody who doesn't know it yet. And as we look at expanding religious, immigrant, people of color inclusion, this is something that I think we've neglected, and so I'm glad to have it brought up. Other things that we're looking at, if there's any interest or if anyone has any speakers that they would like to propose, and this isn't necessarily just for June, but for the future, and this is for our guests too. My contact information is on the agenda. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Daisy Crompton. I work for the Housing Commission, and I am staff to the RTF. And so we're looking at things like documentation status and ability to access home ownership, mortgages, the impact on that, incarceration's impact on Black and minority wealth, and those impacts for home ownership. As you'll hear in the next thing, home ownership is very large right now for the RTF and for me. A lot of folks locally and nationally are looking at childcare's impact on family wealth building, financial stability, just quality of life and health. So that's high on our list. The Reparations Task Force report, of course. And then two that I've been thinking about looking at, and I have no idea where we would find a speaker, but one is TikTok is exploding as a source of financial information for people. And so that's where they're learning. They're getting it, 2-minute bites. And I think this is something I'd like to know more about. And then relatedly, speaking of technology, the potential for AI to provide customized financial counseling and advice. It's something that as we've looked at financial counseling over the years, there's a lot of financial education out there where you provide it to a group, but the one-on-one is really where the rubber meets the road. It's where any of us really got good advice, right? And so that's the most expensive to provide. But if there's potential for AI to do this in a constructive, powerful way, I think it's going to be happening, and somebody may already be thinking about it. So those are potential meetings. That's our going into financial education and home ownership. Our big project right now continues to be, and will be for the next 3 years, the Wells Fargo-funded Worth Homeownership Equity Project, which has a goal of 5,000 BIPOC homeowners through 2025. We are still in the operationalizing stage of this initiative. What we did last year was a community-led planning process that gave us our strategies, but it didn't have the work plan. It's kind of like, you get to the end of the book and it says, and they lived happily ever after. Well, but yeah, who did the dishes, right? And so that's what we're doing now, and we've gone from forming work groups and beginning to talk about it to really getting into the nitty-gritty of the coalition, wants a standardized telephone, one helpline answered by one organization that does information referral and basic screening before sending out people to the appropriate next step, whether that's counseling or education or referral to workforce programs. We're looking at what are those intake questions going to be, where in the budget are we going to do that?
I'm so sorry. It's a mind of its own.
It's always more gracious when the leader does it first.
They like the AI part.
So that's where we are. We are also rolling out 2 of the financial assistance products that were listed in the initial grant. Were an expansion and a renewal of funding for LISC and Urban League's Black Homebuyer program, and then a pilot middle income loan and grant product. Both of those we're looking to have hit the ground July 1st, the beginning of the fiscal year. So we're working on memorandums of agreement and a lot of lawyer stuff, and then we'll be doing a lot of procurement and check writing stuff. So that's it. July 1st is the big date. June 29th, I'll be like this and have more to report. That is the staff report.
Well, thank you so much. And before we turn to task force members for any questions, I just want to check in and see if there are any comments from the public on this item. Okay, thank you so much. Any task force questions or comments? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. So thank you again, Daisy, for that update. And then with that, we will be moving on to item number 6, and this is the federal funding for minority entrepreneurs. Elizabeth is here to present, a longtime task force member. So thank you so much for your work in this and your presentation. And we're all, I think, as excited to hear this news, and so the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And hello, everyone. It's so nice to see everyone in person. My name is Elizabeth Schott. I'm the CEO of Accessity. And Accessity is a almost 30-year-old nonprofit organization. We're what's called a community development financial institution. And we provide, our mission is really surrounded around access to capital, as well as education, connections, and training for both startup entrepreneurs, as well as expanding businesses that may lack access to traditional capital. And so the primary folks that we typically will work with are those within the low to moderate income brackets, as well as BIPOC entrepreneurs, and those of other populations that historically have faced systemic barriers in accessing capital. So that's really our mission. We've been around in the San Diego community, like I said, since 1994. And if you want to go to the next slide, I'm here today to share a really exciting award that we just received that was specific to, so as a CDFI, a Community Development Financial Institution, we carry that designation, and it's through the U.S. Department of Treasury, through the CDFI fund, and it comes with certain standards and the fact that you as an organization have a mission that primarily focuses on those of low to moderate income or other target populations in providing access to financial services. And so the CDFI fund, on a regular basis, we have the opportunity as a nonprofit organization to access federal funds that we can use then in our local markets. And on an annual basis, we oftentimes apply for a one-time annual financial assistance award. And usually it's around the $1 million range, sometimes ranging as small as $500,000. And we apply for that every year. But coming out of the pandemic, one of the things that the CDFI fund and the federal government looked at was there a way to put more investment into CDFIs across the country in order to really help with the ongoing recovery since the COVID-19 pandemic. So this was an actual one-time program that the federal government put $1.73 billion into, called the Equitable Recovery Program. And it basically had an opportunity, a one-time opportunity for CDFIs across the country to actually apply for this funding. The maximum that we could apply for, depending on your financials, and the fact that you also had to look backwards 5 years to demonstrate the fact that you had lent money in these communities over the past historical 5 years. So the maximum that we were allowed to apply for was $15 million. And they awarded 600 CDFIs across the nation with awards about a month and a half ago. And the funding is really specifically to increase the amount of capital that is being penetrated into these low to moderate income areas, but also into populations that have disproportionate effects from the pandemic. And then it's also to build the organization's capacity from a pure staffing, technological infrastructure, and tools and development services to further support the organization long-term in providing financial access to these communities moving forward. So if you want to go to the next slide, what we're proud to announce and also very humbled is that Accessity was awarded $5.8 million. We were the second largest award in the state of California, behind a housing organization that's up in the northern part of California, and we were within the top 15 loan funds awarded nationwide. So we were absolutely thrilled and honored to be part of that. And there were a few other organizations that also got awarded here locally, which was really exciting to see these federal dollars being leveraged and brought to the Southern California community. The two things, the majority of this funding will actually go straight out into small businesses with access to capital through a loan program, as well as a small grant component. So there is some small portions of the funding that will be used to support our operations as an organization. as well as provide loan loss reserves, some development services to the organization to help us actually execute this program. But the majority of the funding will be directed towards the financial product that we develop with the funding. And the two interesting things that I'll share is that we've developed a more flexible loan program that we're still working on, and we're awaiting our assistance agreement from the federal government. As you know, sometimes that takes time, right, once you're awarded. So we don't anticipate actually having that agreement until probably the end of the summer. And so once we have that, we'll finalize this program. But as of right now, our team is working on a more flexible loan product that specifically speaks to some of the historical barriers that we've seen these populations face over our history of 30 years lending. For example, there won't be a minimum credit score with this product. There will be flexibility with the actual capacity and cash flow that we look at, as well as things like backed student debt, medical debt, and utility bills that we have seen oftentimes prohibits these populations from accessing traditional capital. So the other interesting thing about the loan product is that we are going to we are able to use some of the funding for a grant, and so there will be a small grant component that comes alongside the loan. So when a small business owner actually gets the loan, based off of a certain level of repayment history, they will then have access to a small grant that can be cash infusion into their business. So it's really exciting and something that we're very thrilled to be able to offer to the local community. The other two things that I'll share is that specific for this program, the two main criteria that it's required in order to be eligible for this program and to receive this funding for the small business owner is that 100% of the capital is designated for minority-owned businesses. And the other piece to this is that the business has to be located in what's called an eligible census tract. And if you go to the next slide, there's a couple of interesting things. So for the borrower eligibility, here's the list of the minority-owned businesses from their guidance. And then also, the interesting thing about the eligible census tracts is that they didn't just take low to moderate income census tracts. They actually defined the census tracts layering on multiple factors, which actually include both low to moderate income, the area median income. They also looked at CDFI designated native and investment areas, and then they looked at higher mortality rates from the actual COVID-19 pandemic, as well as higher unemployment rates. So that's how the federal government for this particular program defined the eligible census tracts. And so we have basically a tool in which we will be utilizing to look up the business address that then will state whether the borrower that's applying for the funds will qualify in addition to being a minority-owned business. So it's really exciting to have this opportunity to have this dedicated capital to help these populations in these investment areas. And we're just honored that we are a channel to bring this federal funding through to the Southern California community. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see this is a tool that our staff used that's basically a heat map that shows the eligible census tracts. So obviously we have, as mentioned, a lookup tool which will actually be populating business address as people apply to make sure that they're eligible for this. But this gives you a sense of the in San Diego County, the heat maps of where the census tracts generally are located. So you can see there's quite a bit in central and south, and then you see pockets up in Escondido, Oceanside, El Cajon, and outwards into the other areas. So next steps for us, and this isn't on the slide, this is an event that we have coming up, but next steps for us for this program are that we will get our assistance agreement sometime in the summer. Once we do that, we'll operationalize the product, and we will train our community partners and many of our small business association type organizations that we work with across our regions, and we will train them on the eligibility and also on the criteria for the loan product, and then we will launch the product. This is actually a 5-year term, but we want to execute on the capital as fast as possible. So once we launch it, we want to get the capital out as fast as possible, and we look forward to working with so many people around this table, as well as those that we typically work with, like the Small Business Development Centers, SCORE, the Women's Business Centers, all of the different ethnic chambers and business associations, ultimately to make sure that this product is widely known and available for entrepreneurs to access. So I'm happy to take questions on the actual program, and then I'll circle back to our events and some trends that we're seeing just in the small business marketplace, if that works.
Yes, that's totally fine. I just want to check in and see if we have any public comment before we go to questions for task force members. Okay, thank you. So do we have questions about this? Yes, Daisy, please.
This is so exciting, and thank you for sharing it. Did you say, because I was trying to just pick the best notes, but about how many business owners will be served, business, and average or range of loan size, please?
Yeah, so we're still defining that as we will get our assistance agreement and figure out the actual calculation of how much will be used for loan capital and grants. But I think, from our team's perspective, I think we typically our program goes up to 100,000. But for this particular product, in order to make the capital go further, I think we're going to actually cap it at about 50,000 so that we can ultimately have more impact to more entrepreneurs across our service footprint. So, and there'll be more to come on the actual product once we actually have our assistance agreement, Daisy.
And how much of it do you think will be spent in San Diego County?
Yeah. So that's a good question. We are a regional organization, and there are eligible census tracts across all of our footprint. So we are not necessarily designating a certain amount of capital for each county that we serve. It'll be, really up to the application process and working with our partners across the region. I think historically we have a lot of historical partners in San Diego, so I would foresee that we'd probably see more applications in that county than some of our regions that are newer with our expanded footprint. Yeah.
You have any other questions? No? Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
So Wakeland works with a lot of community partners who are nonprofits. Are nonprofits eligible, ineligible?
So our lending is for for-profit businesses. So it's not for nonprofit purposes. It's for for-profit small businesses. Yep.
Any other questions? Sergio.
Thank you, Ollie. Great presentation, Elizabeth. Just a question around the eligibility for businesses. Will there be, for instance, criteria around the small business receiving TA support prior to them applying for?
Yeah, so we will work with our key partners like we do right now as far as technical assistance and development services for the businesses that go through this program. We also are going to specifically work with a more credit counseling type agency to have that available for some of these applicants that go through this program. So there'll be ongoing technical assistance that our internal staff does with participants that get funding through the program, and then there will be specific community partner relationships that we require based upon the applicants that we get. Mm-hmm.
I do have a question. I think you answered it at the end, but I wanted to know what the spin down deadline was, how many years you have.
Yeah, so we actually have 5 years to deploy this, but like I said, our goal is to hopefully launch prior to the end of this calendar year, depending on when the federal government gets our assistance agreement to us. So it'll, I don't know exactly the timing of that. We technically have the 5-year term, but I would anticipate with the amount of capital that we have, just like we did when we responded to COVID, for example, with the relief loan program in the County of San Diego, we were able to deploy $5 million in less than 6 months. So hopefully, I think this one will probably take a little bit longer, just given the runway and the amount of applicants that we may get. But I would anticipate that we'll try to get the capital out, within a year. And then what our responsibility is over the 5-year time frame is that we have to report back to the federal government annually as to the outcomes and the impact that this funding had.
Yes, please.
Elizabeth, is there a resource we can turn to get a sense of the broader ecosystem of a list of awardees across the region?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the CDFI Fund's website, there's actually an award list that I can actually send out on a link via email to Daisy so she can distribute it to the group and the public. But there's on their website, there's actually, if you search Equitable Recovery Program, there's an awardee list of the 600 CDFIs across the country that were awarded funds, and many of them were also community banks, credit unions, loan funds like Accessity that are nonprofit CDFIs, and both CDFIs are both in the housing space and the small business space. So the awards spanned across both housing and small business. So so it was really exciting. And Civic here in the audience, I think, also received some funding through the program locally.
Awesome, Stephen.
Yeah, oops, there we go. As a board member of Civic, I appreciate the reference, and maybe you could talk a little bit about how the BIDs, because I think that's an important way that we're reaching out to the community, is to access through the business improvement districts. Could you talk about that?
So part of our next steps once we get our assistance agreement from the government is to put together a training deck in regards to this program and the criteria. And so one of the things that we plan to do once we have the training decks together is to reach out to all of our partners, like the business improvement districts, the ethnic chambers, the small business development center networks, all of those that reach small business owners through their networks and training programs, ultimately to almost train the trainer, right? So to train them on this program, on what the criteria is, and ultimately to provide the tool that will look up the business address so that they could identify whether a customer coming through their program would be eligible for this product. So that's our next steps as far as operationalizing it and rolling it out to partners before we would roll it out to the public so that they're fully aware and can help with that outreach when appropriate.
Daisy, did you have anything else?
Yeah, I'm still running all the numbers, so thank you. How long are the loan terms, and what are the interest rate range?
So a lot of that is still being defined, but it is going to be a low interest rate product at 6.99. So, and as you can imagine in the inflationary market right now, that's a lower interest rate and it's going to be fixed. And like I said, there'll be a grant component. But the other pieces of the criteria, Daisy, that I know you're probably wondering and wanting to ask, we won't have defined until we get our assistance agreement.
Do you have a range, though? I mean, you do, like, for your existing products that is probably modeled on, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 10 years?
So generally speaking, our terms range anywhere from as little as 2 years all the way out to 5 years, depending upon the size of the loan and the use and purpose of the loan. So I would anticipate that they'll be similar based off of that.
So I have a lot of minority groups in my district that are frequently forgotten because they don't speak Spanish, they're Arabic, they're other countries of the world. How do we get them on your list for that training?
Yeah, so the definition of the minority-owned businesses is on the slide, I think, prior to that. So you can see the different populations that are included in that list based off of the CDFI guidance. If you go a couple more, yep, right there. And so that's what's defined as a minority-owned business per this actual funding. And then to answer your question in regards to how do you get them on our list, you can reach out to me specifically and we can make sure that I have the contact information for those organizations. And that that goes for anyone in this room. If you have other organizations that maybe we don't already work with from a community partner perspective, we're happy to reach out and talk with them directly.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, we'll have you, Elizabeth, just move to the last piece about
Yeah,
the updates.
absolutely. And if anybody has other questions as we roll this out or that you think of, please feel free to reach out to me. If you can go to a couple more slides. Yes. So these are just a couple of events that we have coming up. I mentioned that our program is focused around access to capital, and that's our primary mission is the loan program up to $100,000. But the other thing that we recognize as an organization is capital is one thing, right? In a path to an entrepreneur's success long term, it's also about creating access to education, training, workshops, and connections that ultimately, when that entrepreneur has a question about their financial projections or they have a question about how to sell on the internet, that they have resources that they can go to, whether that be a human being to vet their idea or their question through, or whether they have different guides that are available in the community through many of our community partners. So we also facilitate a lot of different training programs. We run a 10-week startup training academy, both in English and Spanish, that's called the Accessity Academy. We run that twice a year. But we also have events like this. We have a partnership with the Eva Longoria Foundation, who funds our program specifically to outreach to Latina entrepreneurs. And this is a really cool free event that we have coming up on June 10th that has specific topics, really more for learning, right? So learning about how to sell on the internet, how to get access to financing, and how to manage your time. So the event is going to be all in Spanish, and we already have, I think, 150 people registered for this event, which is super exciting. So that's coming up June 10th. And then if you go to the next slide, we have another really cool national partnership that we work with Sam Adams and the Boston Beer Company, and this one's called the Brewing the American Dream speed coaching event. It's kind of mirrored after speed dating. So if you can think of a bunch of different tables with experts on different topics, the entrepreneurs that come to this are really in the food, beverage, hospitality, and craft brew space. So restaurants, food trucks, craft brewers, and they basically speed date with experts on topics for like 20 to 30 minutes. So it's super high energy, and Sam Adams launches this, and we've done this for the past 5 or 6 years. We took a break, obviously, during COVID because it's an in-person event, but we were back last year, and oftentimes we have somewhere around 100 to 150 people. It's here locally in San Diego at the Marina Village on June 20th, and it's also a free event, and there's food catered by one of our small business clients, and there's beer too because Sam Adams hosts it with us. So it's super fun. If any of you want to come and just experience it, it's a wonderful event to get a lot of resources to entrepreneurs all at once. So if you go to the next slide, I'll just share a couple of different things. Daisy asked me to talk a little bit about just on the ground what we're hearing and seeing from small businesses that we work with. These are the hot topics that people are sharing with us or that we're seeing as we vet loan applications through our process that are actually affecting small businesses right now in the many populations that we service. Obviously, inflation and the rising interest rates and access to capital is a challenge right now for small businesses, both personally and on the business side, right? The other thing that we're hearing continuously from small businesses since the pandemic and even right now is cost of goods has just gone up. And one of the things that we're finding and hearing from small businesses is it's really hard for them to even budget or the balance of their cost of goods. For example, if they serve burgers and their buns go up 50%, it's not like they can charge, $45 for a burger, right? And so it's a very difficult balance for many of our small businesses, specifically in even the food and restaurant industry where it's very volatile. So we're hearing a lot of struggles with that, just trying to project and small businesses trying to figure out how to balance all of those costs rising and then, not being able to pass that on to the customer fully. The other thing I would say is just the tightening credit market. We anticipate, just like we saw, after the recession in 2008, 2009, we anticipate that the traditional credit markets will tighten and continue to tighten, meaning that it's vital for CDFIs and other nonprofit alternative lenders to be available for these populations as the traditional markets tighten. The other thing we're seeing a lot of is customers that are getting into products that are more predatory when it comes to daily interest rate products or interest where they don't fully understand the terms and the rates and the fees of an actual product. And so it seems really easy to apply and get the funding, but then once they get into the funding, they're paying daily interest and sometimes upwards of anywhere from 50 to 80% APR. There is a truth in lending bill that passed recently in the state of California that helps to mitigate this, where commercial lenders have to actually disclose the APR at the time of offer for financing. So that was California's first step to try to help to protect the small businesses when they're trying to access financing. But oftentimes the small business owners still get confused in looking at the terms and those documentations, pieces of documentation when they're actually looking for financing. And so it's really important that we as a nonprofit community, as well as those that are working with these small business owners, just educate them to really fully understand the terms and the rates and the fees prior to actually signing on the dotted line for a financial product. The other thing that we hear from our small businesses is staffing competition, right? So particularly in certain industries that we service a lot, it's, just very difficult to find good staff, to retain the staff, and to actually be competitive in pay. And so that's been a real challenge for many of our small businesses. And so one of the things that we've been sharing with them is the more you can ultimately demonstrate the culture of working for your small business, what opportunities and benefits and training you offer employees, and the more that you can put that out front when you're in your hiring and retention practices, the better. We also have a partnership with the San Diego Employers Association that we offer a hotline where small businesses can call in and ask a question on their practices or their employee handbook or whatnot, and also get training in the harassment prevention compliance area if they have 5 or more employees, which is required here in the state of California. And then the last thing that I'll mention in regards to the trends and feedback that we're seeing is that, I think small businesses oftentimes get overwhelmed when it comes to processes about permitting, licensing. And so I know the city recently has done some streamlining for that when it comes to actually getting their permits and licenses. And I think the more friendly that our government offices can be with streamlining the places they need to go and the actual licenses and permits that they need, and putting that all information in one place and also putting it in different languages is something that's extremely helpful. So happy to answer any questions about any of those things, but the other quick thing that I'll just close with is we truly appreciate many of the partners around this table in regards to outreach to small businesses when we have both our regular loan program, our events, and then these specialized programs that will roll out with the Equitable Recovery Program from the CDFI Fund. And we also appreciate our banking partners, and it's wonderful because we also receive grants from Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and U.S. Bank that helps us to leverage these federal funds into the local community to pay for both our operations and our programmatic costs as an organization. And I did want to just acknowledge, basically yesterday we also got a wonderful announcement from U.S. Bank, which obviously is combining with our historical partner and funder Union Bank, that we are receiving a multi-year grant for $750,000 from U.S. Bank for the next 3 years, a total of $750,000, which will really, really help our organization to deploy products and services to small businesses across Southern California. So thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you. That's awesome news. Arquette, did you want to?
Just going to say thank you for mentioning it. And we're very much aware of the importance and impact of the work you do. I'm really excited that we actually kind of get to keep a little closer to my colleagues on the other side of the table in terms of our investment with you guys. So.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Monica Gary. I'm here as an alternate for Mitch Johnson from the International Rescue Committee, and I work with the IRC Small Business Development Center. So it's wonderful to hear about your programs, and congratulations. We have a lot of clients, including many clients who are, they do culturally and religiously are aligned with Islamic practices about finance, and we've been working with the Center for Economic Opportunity, the IRC's nonprofit bank, to help them get zero interest loans. Those are soon ending. We're hoping there'll be a new product, but of course it depends on funding. That's something, and working with other populations too, including Latino, underserved populations, African Americans, LGBTQ communities. So welcome an opportunity to collaborate more, and we have a lot of clients who would benefit from your programs as well. So thank you.
Absolutely, and I know Mitch well as Kazra, so we will definitely collaborate. Yeah.
Awesome. Any more questions or comments from task force members? Well, Elizabeth, Peter, go ahead.
I would just say that all those lists of marketplace trends, are certainly impacting small businesses, but also impacting medium businesses too. It's tough out there.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things, I think our small businesses were so impacted during the height of the pandemic, but they really are still in a recovery mode. And so I think it's important for those of us that service that community in these populations and census tracts that it's going to be a couple of years really for this recovery. And so the investment around the table from our government partners, from our other community partners, and also our banking partners and corporate partners is really, really important the next few years.
Totally agree, and I think that the pandemic, in my opinion, really forced us to do things that we should have been doing all along. And so we really cannot allow people to fall off a cliff, so to speak, because those resources may not be there. So this is really good timing for this award, and I believe we all have to just stay committed and understand that we may not necessarily be wearing masks anymore or have a mask mandate, but the impacts of the pandemic are still certainly lingering, and it's just going to take a while for our small businesses, our medium businesses, our nonprofits, and our individuals and families to recover from what we've been through, which is a once-in-a-century event. So thank you so much for the presentation. It's really exciting, so we'll look forward to updates from you. And we're going to now move on to our next item. We have Seth Lichney, the Housing Policy Program Manager from the City of San Diego. Hello, Seth. Here with us to go over the City of San Diego housing element. And so Seth will present before us and talk about innovative methods for encouraging and financing housing developments. Seth, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the invitation, Council President Pro Tem, and good afternoon to the task force members. Just to reiterate, my name is Seth Lichney. I'm Program Manager for Housing Policy Development with the City of San Diego Planning Department. I do have a presentation that I kind of wanted to walk through just to get you initiated on what our department is, what we do. The housing element that was adopted and certified a couple of years ago, and then kind of show how the rubber hits the road, how that housing element leads to the types of policy proposals that we're putting forward before the San Diego City Council on a regular basis. So just for the uninitiated, part of the mission statement for the City of San Diego Planning Department is to plan for an equitable and sustainable future with affordable homes, good jobs, infrastructure, and public spaces for the people of San Diego. No small task, indeed. We have 3 divisions in our department, Community Planning and Housing, which is the department that I'm under. We also do work on environmental policy and public spaces, so that's the infrastructure side of our mission. And then we have community engagement and as another division that assists us in making sure that we're able to get information out to the public so that they're aware of what's going on in our department. So just to start, I wanted to give a brief overview of the City of San Diego's general plan. And the general plan is really considered to be, by the state of California, the constitution for growth. Every city and county in the state of California is required to prepare a general plan that looks at a 20 to 30, maybe even 30 to 40 sometimes year outlook for growth and development within their jurisdiction. It is considered to be the comprehensive plan for growth and development. It's the foundation for the land use decisions that are made every day by a city or a county. In particular, the City of San Diego's general plan, which was adopted in 2008, was really kind of the first approach at looking at smart growth for planning in San Diego, acknowledging that we, as a city, don't have a lot of open space left where we can build housing. So we need to start looking inward and promote what's called infill development, and that's building where existing growth and development already exists. There are also sustainability policies that are incorporated throughout the plan. So in general, a general plan consists of 10 distinct elements. Those are really just chapters, but they are defined in state law as issues that need to be addressed in a general plan. So for example, you have to have a land use element that looks at the future growth for your city. You have to have a circulation element that looks at how people are going to be getting around. You have to have a conservation element that protects natural resources. Each of these elements contain policies that are intended to work together toward a comprehensive development pattern to achieve those goals. And then the elements in the City of San Diego's case inform future community plan updates. So the City of San Diego, somewhat unique in that it's divided up into 42 or 50 different community planning areas. So when you hear about La Jolla, Kearny Mesa, San Ysidro, each of those are community planning areas, and each of those areas has its own specific community plan that really guides targeted growth and development in those areas. They also provide kind of site-specific policy recommendations. As you can imagine, the variety of neighborhoods in the City of San Diego call for different policies to address specific needs. So the housing element is one of the required elements of the general plan, but it's a little bit different than all of the other elements. As you can see, the city's last general plan was adopted in 2008. State law requires cities to update housing elements every 8 years. So there have been a couple of housing elements since that general plan was first adopted. The most recent one being adopted in 2021. The housing element, in addition to doing all of those things of identifying places where housing can be located, ensuring that you've zoned for enough land for that housing to be built in the future, housing elements are also required to include programs and that really kind of take that next step and say, we're not just making sure that we have enough land zoned for housing, what are some of the ways that we're going to be implementing programs that will see that housing actually get built. And so the housing element looks very different from other elements specifically for that reason. Oh, and it's worth mentioning too that we have to monitor our progress on our housing element on an annual basis and report that to the state of California. And the state of California also has a much bigger role in certifying a housing element. Once it's adopted by a city, it has to be submitted to the state of California so that the Department of Housing and Community Development can say yes or no, your housing element complies with state law. So within our housing element, we have a structure of goals, objectives, policies, programs, and activities. So again, it's not just about thinking about the future, about where housing should be located. It's about how are we going to get there and how are we going to actually see that housing get built. These are just some example goals that our housing element includes, but we do want to see the construction of quality housing. We need to improve the existing housing stock. We need to provide new affordable housing, and we always want to meet those goals of sustainable development and growth. And a lot of this ties back to other programs that the City of San Diego has, like the Climate Action Plan that calls for a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions caused by driving single occupancy vehicles and trying to find ways so that people can take other forms of transportation, walking, biking, or taking transit. So within those goals, we list a number of programs, and I think it's somewhere around 80, 90 programs that we mention in the housing element. And again, the idea here is that we're showing that as a city, we have a structure in place so that housing can get built, so that people who need housing can get into the housing that has been constructed. You want to kind of show from start to finish how your jurisdiction can achieve the goals that are set up through in-state law for housing elements. So I'd say on the left side of this slide are more of the planning department activities that we generally take on to implement our housing element. We do things like community plan updates. Recently adopted a community plan in Mira Mesa that added capacity for 25,000 new homes in that community area. That's an important area too because it has access to jobs and it's a fairly large community geographically for the city of San Diego. We set up things like affordable housing density programs, moderate income density programs. We're really looking for ways in our code to incentivize a variety of housing types at different affordability levels, knowing that we just don't have enough housing in San Diego to address the needs of all of our residents at this time. We do annual municipal code updates so that we can take a look at our code and say, are there places where this is working? Is the way that it's written kind of being interpreted in a way that wasn't intended? Are there just improvements that we can make? Are there new policies that we can add? We're constantly taking a look at our code and trying to find ways to make it better. On the right side are some of those programs that we kind of view as being in partnership with other organizations. San Diego Housing Commission, this task force itself is listed as one of our programs that is intended to implement the housing element. Things like safe parking lot programs to address the unhoused. Our climate action plan, as I mentioned earlier, is a big driver. So there are a lot of different programs that we mention and include in the housing element to show the state of California there are a number of different efforts that are being taken so that we can address housing on a large scale. And it's important to note that one of the drivers of every housing element is what's called the regional housing needs allocation, and that's where the state, it's a kind of a multi-level government process where the state of California makes a determination to say every region, every city, and every county must plan for housing growth in their housing element. And we're even going to tell you exactly how many homes you need to plan for in your housing element. And so in the 2020, SANDAG adopted what's called the 6th Cycle Regional Housing Needs Assessment Plan. And what that did was allocate housing units to each jurisdiction in the county and the county of San Diego, and basically said, this is the number of homes that your jurisdiction needs in order to meet the needs of your residents. And you can see that those homes are divided up amongst income levels, where you have a number of homes that are for very low, and moderate income households, and then also above moderate income households. And generally here, I'm not a big math guy, but generally here, if above moderate is kind of your more market rate housing development, so you're looking at 43,000 above moderate units, that means you've got about 65,000 that are needed for residents who are of moderate income or below. And so that's a big task, and this is the reason why our department and our city take so many actions to try to make progress toward toward providing the number of housing units that are needed in the region. 108,000 is quite a few housing units for an 8-year period. I can tell you in the first 2 years, 2020 and 2021, we've permitted about 10,000 of those 108,000. We have a lot of work left to do. And that gets me to the second part. So the housing element and the general plan are really our guides for developing policies that we can bring forward that can help us achieve the goals of the housing element and that I just described. And one of the ways that we do it is through what's called a housing action package. We're actually on our second one, doing a second one in 2 years. And these are amendments to our land development code that are intended to encourage more housing development throughout the city. Just a couple of goals that we're trying to hit with our housing action package. Build upon our first housing action package. It included amendments to our land development code for Senate Bill 9 that allowed for more homes to be developed in single-family zones. We have existing programs like our Complete Communities program that provides a generous density bonus for projects that meet affordable housing requirements and provide public amenities. And so we're looking for ways that we can build upon and improve those type of programs so that we can really incentivize a diverse range of homes and products. It's not just about a 400 or 500 square foot studio apartment for 108,000 of those for everyone to live in. That would be great to have that many housing units, but what about people who have multiple kids? What about intergenerational families? What about people with disabilities who may need a certain type of housing? We're looking to find ways to incentivize more types of homes so that we can meet the need of all of our residents. Additionally, we're looking to affirmatively further fair housing goals, address climate change and equity goals that the city has. So just a couple more high-level topics to address. We're also looking to make it easier to build more homes. We want to have a process that isn't time-consuming. We want to see the housing get built. We want to see it go through a process where if it's consistent with what we've proposed in our code, it can get approved in a timely manner. We also understand there can be negative impacts to housing growth. Residents can be displaced in existing communities. Gentrification can occur, so we're looking to find ways to address that, some of those negative impacts. And in general, we're really looking to implement the goals of our community plans, our housing element, and our climate action plan. So I'll go through these fairly quickly because I have one item that I kind of want to touch on a little bit because you'll be able to see some of the ways that we address those goals through our policy development. But we have our housing action package has 11 different items that are each of them of kind of varying degrees of intensity or difficulty, if you will. But we want to provide homes on public land, so where the city or the housing commission or school district owns land that potentially could be converted into housing, we want to have a process to make that happen. We're also looking for ways to provide new homes on underutilized commercial sites, knowing that markets change and the need for commercial space will vary over time. We want to make sure that if it's time for that underutilized commercial site to redevelop, that we've got a process in place to make that happen. We're also looking at reduced parking requirements for home development, and that's something that the state of California passed a bill last year that made some amendments to that, so we're making similar amendments to our code to implement. Furthering fair housing, as I mentioned before, we're looking for a different type of, we're looking to make sure that we provide housing types for all residents. So we're looking for new homes for families, new homes for very low income community members, new homes for moderate income community members, and we're doing that in a number of ways with our existing programs. A big part of what we want to do for fair housing is provide that housing type in places where it currently doesn't exist. We have neighborhoods that don't have any deed restricted affordable housing. It's just never been built there at any point in time. Those are the kind of places where we think we can provide incentives to start seeing that type of development occur. Thriving communities, again, as I mentioned, we understand there can be negative impacts to growth and development. So we have a suite of anti-displacement measures that we're putting forward. We want to make some of the home protection regulations that are currently in our code permanent. We want to provide rental preference to existing community members when there's new development that occurs in their neighborhoods. And we want to replace harmful uses, and that's generally places that have an existing use that maybe isn't compatible with a neighborhood, something like a scrapyard that could be next to people's homes. We've done a lot of work over the last several years updating community plans in places where these type of incompatibilities exist and rezoning those lands for those incompatible uses to allow for housing. What we want to see then is eventually see some of that turnover into housing development, and so we're looking for ways to replace those harmful uses that currently exist. So the one item that I kind of wanted to dive a little bit into deeper is our missing middle homes proposal, and that is the implementation of Senate Bill 10. We call it missing middle homes because it allows for up to 10 units to be built on any parcel that's located near transit or is considered an urban infill site for by the state of California. And what this allows for is a different type of development. You could see townhomes, row homes. You could see the type of development that's shown on this image here, all being something that could be allowed in areas that where that type of development currently isn't allowed to be built under the current zoning. And so, as I mentioned, there are some geographic requirements for where it will apply, but one of the nice things about Senate Bill 10 is it leaves a lot of leeway for jurisdictions that want to implement SB 10. It's not required to be implemented by every city. We're one of very few cities in the state that are moving forward trying to adopt an ordinance to allow for this. But there's a lot of ways and a lot of issues that we can address locally to make sure that the program works for San Diego, and I'll go through some of those. First of all, where does it apply? We just went through a process of developing what's called a sustainable development area, which is in a geographic area that's intended to provide people with those opportunities to walk and use their bikes to access transit stations. So we think this is the type of development that should occur in those areas. There's a few places where we would not allow it. Some of those bullets are maybe a little bit too far into the weeds, but it needs to be either near a major transit stop or surrounded by urban uses. So we're not talking about far-flung areas where somebody can't access transit. If there's deed-restricted affordable homes, we don't think that they should be replaced with SB 10 homes, so it wouldn't be applicable to those parcels. We also want to make sure that we're providing this in areas that have adequate infrastructure, as we have neighborhoods that currently don't have adequate sidewalks. How can we expect people to walk and take transit if they don't have those amenities in their neighborhoods that currently exist? So until we can get those sidewalks built in those neighborhoods, SB 10 wouldn't apply. There's also, environmental issues that we want to make sure that we are not kind of in conflict with. So multiple habitat planning areas, environmentally sensitive lands would all be exempt from SB 10. So what can you do if you're one of these sites that are, and there will be a good amount of sites where this can apply. So basically, if the parcel is zoned to allow for multifamily development, you can get that maximum of 10 homes. If your parcel is zoned for single-family development, what we think should be done is provide one home for every 1,000 square feet of lot area. So if you have a 6,000 square foot lot, you can build 6 homes on that lot. The maximum then would be 10 homes that could be built on a 10,000 square foot lot. The bill, SB 10, is very specific. We can't necessarily go over allowing 10 homes on a site, with some exceptions for accessory dwelling units, but I won't get into that. So this is some of the ways, again, as we talk about housing element policy, that we want to make sure we're implementing as we develop programs like this. We think there should be an affordable homes requirement to development that occurs under SB 10. And the proposal that we're putting forward says that if you're doing a development of more than 4 homes, so between 5 and 10, you would be required to provide one affordable home to a very low or moderate income household. If that, and this is where ideas like fair housing can get addressed through policy and programs, if your project is, the parcel is located in a highest resource area, and those are areas identified by the state of California as being places that have high performing schools, better paying jobs, fewer environmental impacts. Those are the places, again, where we also don't have a lot of affordable housing. So what we're proposing is to add an additional affordable home available to very low or low income residents if it's in those areas. We have some base zone requirements that I won't dive too deeply into, but we want to make sure that, again, we're achieving the type of development that we consider to be missing middle. So 35 feet allows for row home development where you may have a parking garage on the first floor. And then we have some other requirements that can try to achieve that product type. Again, also trying to make sure we're providing a diverse array of homes. We would have a requirement for development with more than 4 homes that at least 2 of those homes have 3 bedrooms or more, and at least 1 has 2 bedrooms. Home ownership is something that we think is an important component of SB 10, as this is missing middle homes. It could provide opportunities for more home ownership. We don't have a lot of programs in the city of San Diego that promote homes being developed that are eventually sold. And so there are some issues with subdividing lots and selling those subdivided homes that are required by state law that could be in conflict with this. So basically what we're proposing right now is that we set it up so that if that parcel can be subdivided, there would be no additional physical improvements that would need to be made to the building. So build it in a way that it can be subdivided in the future. And then fees, we want to make sure we're collecting development impact fees to pay for infrastructure improvements that will be needed as we see more residents in areas around the city. So Housing Action Package 2.0, we're actually scheduled to go to the Planning Commission 1 week from today, and we'll be bringing it forward to the City Council later this summer. So very excited, one of our priorities as a department to make sure that this is, that we're addressing the housing crisis in a lot of different ways, implementing our housing element, and really trying to meet that mission that the office has for better neighborhoods and better communities in San Diego. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Seth, for that thorough presentation. We'll just turn to see if there are any public commenters for this item. There are. There is one. Okay, you will have 3 minutes, Gustavo.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Your last, I know you, but the last name, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna try.
No, that's okay. Gustavo Bedart, former member of the task force. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Great presentation. Just had a couple of questions if I was sitting on the other side of the dais here. One of the questions I have for you would be, what plans does the city or maybe of the county has regarding the efficiency of the titles and entitlements and permits to get these developments developed? And the reason why I ask that question is because sometimes it takes so long to move some of these projects that the project at the beginning cost X amount of dollars, and by the time they get out of the city or the county permitting process, it costs more.
So Gustavo, I'm gonna just have you ask your questions for the public comment period, and then we'll turn back around and then I turn back to the task force.
Okay, so the second question I have for us to consider is, as a former chairman of a nonprofit in an LMI community, I'm concerned that the number of new development in certain LMI communities is only affordable housing, therefore creating pockets of poverty. And as many of us know, that if that's all you have in a particular community, certain services are not provided because of the potential consumer that lives in those communities. Kind of the opposite of what you see in like in the communities of Eastlake, where or planned urban developments where you see some really many market rate housing, and you have to become inclusionary to bring in the LMI families in. So now it's the opposite. So just a couple of questions to consider. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Good to see you. That is our only public comment, and so we'll turn it over to task force members. But Seth, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to those questions.
Sure. Thank you so much. I'll just speak from the city perspective. I really can't give you a lot of insight into what happens in other cities or the county of San Diego. But the ensuring that entitlements occur on a timely basis is certainly an ongoing issue with the city of San Diego. We have a development services department that is that in the last couple of years has been making additional hires to really start moving permits through the process, including looking at ways of bringing in some assistance from consultants who can help kind of move those projects along. So it's certainly an issue that we want to try to address. I think as a planning department, as we're setting our policy, it's something that we're cognizant of, and really trying to find a way that we can get housing approved through kind of the easiest, most smooth process that we can. We do work closely with development services on trying to find ways to improve the process as we bring forward new programs as well. On the nonprofit, on the new development side of affordable housing, I think that's a fair housing issue, certainly. One of the things that we were required to look at in the housing element was where do we have overconcentration of poverty in our communities? And so we have maps, we have areas where we know that exists. And I think what we're trying to do, at least from a land use perspective, there are a lot of issues that go into overcoming these patterns of discrimination that occurred over decades. But what we're trying to do is find ways that we can say we need to have more affordable housing in all of our communities. We don't want to exclude affordable housing from places where, maybe some of our lower income communities, because we want to have opportunities for people who want to stay to be able to stay. But we definitely want to have more opportunities for low income residents to live wherever they choose to live in the city of San Diego. If that's closer to where they work, if that's closer to a place where they want to be, closer to a place that feels like home, that's what we want to go for and try to achieve.
Thank you, Seth. I'm going to turn it over to our co-chair, Supervisor Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Gustavo, I can speak to the county because in their last board meeting, I brought a board letter forward, and we're rethinking everything that you're talking about. The city of San Diego has some great streamlining plans where they have guaranteed outcomes, but in our entitlement process, it's very, very difficult. So we have just passed $14 million of changes that we're going to reinvest to speed up that process, to make it workable for people that when you start the project, the cost shouldn't go up prohibitively so that by 2 years from now, when you're finally able to build it, you can't build it. So that's a huge problem. The second thing is what you brought up for the county is applicable, I believe, to the VMT and how we're imposing it. What we're doing is we're modern day redlining minorities from moving to rural communities by simply saying you're outside the VMT, so therefore you should not be allowed to own anything more than 1,000 square feet around your house. You shouldn't be on a half acre like so many other people have for the history of our county. So I'm deeply concerned about VMT being weaponized to keep minorities from traditionally white communities. And then one of the things that people, and I think the city's looking at this too, is the tax advantage of building, right? We know from the county assessor, because I have him give a report, that if we were to build an average home, whether it's a condo or whatever, if it's $500,000, it's between $6,000 and $9,000 of additional tax revenue to the county of San Diego. So when you're looking at doing 5,800 homes, you're looking at anywhere between $34 million and $56 million. That's a huge funding ability for infrastructure, for social services, for all these wonderful things. And remember, when we add affordable housing, we don't get a multiple effect. When we add workforce housing, people are moving up, they're moving down, and now you've got two hits at Prop 13, the new purchase and then the old purchase of the home that you left to either downsize because you're an empty nester or upsize because you're starting your family. And so all these things matter moving forward. I'm sorry I took us a little off, but as a former member, I wanted to give you the county's perspective.
No, it's all very, very relevant. Do we have any more task force? Yes, Antonio.
Thank you. So, are there any plans to have kind of a construction development lending plan and maybe an opportunity for the Gustavo CDFI to kind of start creating something that can help the people that want to develop these sites?
I can't say from the planning department perspective, but I know there are a lot of other efforts that are being made. Housing Commission, perhaps.
For a point of clarity, after supervisors' comments and previous comments on SB 10 implementation, so does implementation mean that it necessarily will not be a streamlined ministerial approval process, that we still may require entitlements and or zoning variances, or does this plan allow us to just approve?
Very much the latter. And in fact, that's where we kind of run into the issue with home ownership, is that a subdivision would require a discretionary action. And so we're not writing in a requirement for home ownership because we want to make sure that we still have the ability to approve these type of developments with a ministerial process.
Thanks for the clarification.
Sergio.
Thank you. You mentioned Seth, thank you for the insightful presentation. You mentioned deed restrictions. How does the city handle expiring deed restriction? And perhaps if you can share some metrics, is it upward trending? Is it stable? Specifically, deed restrictions that may be expiring.
There are a number of other efforts that are being made on preserving affordable housing. Off the top of my head, I'm not familiar with the exact approach that's being taken for that, but I certainly know it's of concern for the San Diego Housing Commission, for the City of San Diego, to really try to find ways to ensure that there's that affordable housing that needs to be preserved can be in the future.
Thank you.
Stephen.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. I know this is a hot topic these days, and I think it's really important what this is doing toward helping us meet our housing goals. I think that the opponents of it overstate the scope of what might get built, and I think that the proponents of it are going to be disappointed at how little actually gets built. It's the way, it's how we're looking at it, I think. And I think it's worth going back to when we talk about capacity issues and community plans, that we never actually meet these capacity numbers. These are theoretical if we build on 100%. So I think there's a little anxiety and not quite hysteria on this topic. What I do want to comment is that it's very important for this opportunity to have more product available for sale, because one of the great limiting factors we're seeing across the programs that I have participation in is that the availability of product for sale is one of the biggest challenges for families wanting to step up. So I think this is a softer, gentler way. I mean, we are, under current state law, we are not going to be able to sprawl outside our boundaries. City of San Diego is extremely constrained. It is all going to be infill at this point. And this is the kind of more gentle infill I think is going to be absolutely essential. And the preservation issue, yes, is also being discussed in so many tables and so many rooms right now. It's I would actually like to have a conversation where we pull all those tables together, because there's a lot of interest, and I hear this as I sit on the board of CalHFA. We talk about preservation, the task force here at the commission. We talk about it through civic community ventures. We've got to get serious about putting resources toward this. If we're not gonna lose these public investments we make, or the public benefits that we trade for, which aren't really direct investments, but they're benefits we're expecting, we should make sure that they are preserved. So I thank you for your thoughtful presentation here today, and I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the city. and the Housing Commission for all of the housing policy work that you're doing on affordable housing, density bonus, really streamlined implementation of new state law that's become passed recently to facilitate affordable housing. I would say that as I'm an affordable housing developer, nonprofit developer. We're definitely taking advantage of all of these programs in state law and city law, and using them to to build projects throughout the city of San Diego. And it's been just absolutely wonderful to partner with the city in that way. And we certainly we have a choice where we develop, San Diego and other places, and it's really great when local jurisdiction is helpful in trying to facilitate the development of property. So I think all of the housing element planning, I think it's really fantastic. What I would say, something like where we need improvement is, I think, really implementing funding programs. And obviously I'm working on a very specific part of affordable housing, up to 60% of the area median income, primarily apartments, tax credit housing. The city's IBA office last fall put together a report on sort of the city's processes and programs and coordination of affordable housing development and funding. And I think that report was well done. And I think that that's something that it would be great to follow up on over time, to implement strategies to streamline things. Because in our business, really putting together the funding is a huge component of bringing projects and units to fruition. And any way that we can increase funding, of course, but also streamline it, make it easier to access, so that rather than 3 or 4 years, we can get projects funded in 2 or 3. That really makes a big difference in our ability to house folks and our ability to control costs, and make it easier for me to sleep at night. So that's just a little feedback.
Thank you. Anyone else? I just want to speak very briefly, just kind of putting the councilmember hat on with regard to District 4 and the issues surrounding concentration of poverty, which are very real. I also just want to point out that the average median income right now in San Diego is $106,000, almost $107,000. So people who are in these 30 to 60% AMI apartment units are generally making $60,000 a year. May have families, and so you used to be able to actually buy a home with that type of income. And so I think just us, kind of seeing where we are right now, what the need is, where the opportunities have changed since maybe they were, the change from where they were 30 years ago, even 20 years ago, 40 years ago, something that we have to do. I think I focus on trying to have all types of different housing in the community. So right now we have about 800 units or so that are in some part of the building process we have 0 to 30% project for our veterans, and then we have other projects with the higher amounts of AMI, but we also have about 300 or so units right now that are actually single-family homes that are giving people, first-time home buyers, an opportunity to buy. And so, and then we focus on park space, we focus on our infrastructure, we focus on those types of things to make a balanced community, whether you're have 30% AMI or whether you're able to purchase a home. And I think that has been my focus, and it is very, very important. We just have to put perspective into what AMI means, and the more that we are driving folks out that can't live here and others are coming that are making higher amounts of money, that AMI goes up. It goes up every year. And so that changes, what people can actually afford and what the developers are focused on, right? So anyway, just want to put that out there. That is very complex. Certainly don't want any concentration of poverty. That is not a per HUD, that we're not supposed to do that. It is not what we should do under fair housing principles. It's just that you have people living in these homes that are making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. And that's not, that shouldn't be chump change, right? So that I just, wanted to point out that balance of what we're trying to do. But thank you so much, Seth. It's good to see you outside of City Hall. Appreciate the presentation. If there are no other comments or questions, we are going to go to item number 8 at this time, Neighborhood Assistance Corporation of America. I have some intro comments. So Sharon Bogney, a mortgage loan originator, a mortgage broker at NACA, Neighborhood Corporation of America, will be presenting for us. Neighborhood Assistance Corporation of America is a national nonprofit that provides low-cost loans to home buyers with thin or challenged credit and savings. Sharon will be sharing with us about NACA's low-cost home loans, and the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I've been with NACA for about 6 years, and NACA has been in business for almost 40 years. It's amazing for me to be here because I'm excited. I heard a lot of things. Not the other one. Sorry. Yes, I heard a lot of things, and I want to see how we can help because some of the things that you guys are discussing are things that we've tried to streamline in the course of our program. It's a nonprofit. And NACA, almost everybody who works at NACA is a HUD certified counselor. And NACA at the moment is one of the biggest HUD counseling agency in the country. HUD sends them to us to counsel them. We have a facility that we do that. So it's very important that we do mention that. And we have several programs in that we have. We have the Home Buyers Program, the Purchase Program. We have what we call the HUD PHA. And the HUD PHA, I'm going to a bit reverse it because it's something about Section 8. And it's a bit different for us over here in California. So it's literally going to be HUD PHA for everybody, but it's mostly the Section 8 program. We want to see how we can have the housing voucher program transition into home ownership. And then we have what we call the $1 purchase program, which is hot on the cake now. Everybody wants to get involved with it. And it's one of those things that we want to be able to present to the city and see how we can do that. One of the programs that we do offer as part of our in-house programming is that we have property repair options. Most of the property, as a matter of fact, 100% of the properties that members do purchase with our loans must be livable before you move into them. So we make sure that that they pass inspections and the property you can live in them, before we allow the loans to close. And we also have new construction. We allow new construction programs, which tallies with what we have for the $1 program. And also, we do have homeowner assistance programs for those ones that already have mortgages who can't seem to pay their mortgages. We have a department that does help, not just NACA members, anybody who needs help with assistance with trying to get them loans restructured and stuff. We do have that. And then we have the refinance program. That is not necessarily a refinance, it's just a refinance for rehab programs for people that already have the NACA mortgage over the years and need to do some work on their properties. We do invite them back to come get some work done, and how they can get that done. And then we also at the moment, and I'm glad that I heard Mr. Peter talking about being a developer. We're trying as much as possible to partner with a lot of, try to find partnerships out there. Find people in the community that really do agree with our program, that want to help the low to the moderate income homeowners in the community and partner with them because we want to be able to develop, if we have the opportunity to build up houses for the low to the moderate income people and have them purchase them at the market rates. Oh, shit. I think she gave me this. Sorry about that. So in our program, we have no down payments, no closing costs, no fees, no PMIs, usually below the fixed market rate. And we do not have any consideration for the credit score, which is one of the reasons that many low to moderate income people have been held down. It's that credit score piece. So we don't have a consideration of the credit score. And as of the moment, we have over 75,000 successful home buyers. I've been in the company for over 6 years. I've actually had 300 people close loans under me, so it is possible. If I did 300, I mean, we have companies over 50 offices in the whole United States. So I think we've done more than 75,000. And most of, like they did put out there, 85% of our homeowners are colored people. So it's really, the program is centered to help the low to the moderate minority members of the community. Even though we do not necessarily streamline who comes in, one of the ways that we've been able to curb gentrification in neighborhoods is that we have our members, we don't call them clients, they're members. We have our members in two categories. We have the priority members and the non-priority members. So we don't stop anybody from coming into the program. But what we do is that the priority members can purchase anywhere in the MSA. The non-priority members have a restriction where they can purchase using the FFIC map where they can purchase. And if they do buy in what areas we call the priority areas, they do get the LMB grant as well. So in other words, we're trying to mix everybody up, and not create a barrier for other places. So one of the things that NACA Mortgage has done over the years is to remove some of the barriers that we have in home ownership. One of it is the down payment. So most times that we do get grants, which we are also looking forward to having our members access as much grants as possible, it's not towards the down payment. The grants can help with buying down interest if they need to buy down interest or do principal reduction, but we do not have any down payment. We have no closing costs because the lender takes on that. And having on affordable terms, things like the PMIs. We've slashed it out in our program. We don't have PMIs in our program. And we try as much as possible to deal with the racism barriers that we have in the community, the underwriting roadblocks based off of credit scores and stuff. We remove that from our program. So no down payments. The closing cost is taken care of by the lender. No points of fees. Application fees, none. Mortgage insurance, none. We have an option of our members being able to buy down interest. We can buy down up to 5.25 points. We also welcome the sellers to help with that. So we do have a rehab program that is functional with the program. So you can go to as high as 110% of the appraised value of the property can be escrowed into your mortgage. So sometimes you don't have to come up out of pocket for anything to fix your homes prior to closing. We have the 15, 20, or 30-year mortgage, full amortizing mortgages, and no credit score. What we look at really is your pay history. We look at the pay history to see who can actually purchase a home. Looking at the 24 months, mostly the 12 months really, to make sure that if you're keeping your credit, if you're being responsible with making sure you pay your bills on time, that means we can get you into the program. And we have single families, condos, co-ops, 1 to 4 units, mixed use. They're all in the inclusive existing mortgages, properties, or new constructions as well. I did mention this earlier. NACA has a comprehensive counseling service that is free as part of the package. So people who come to us, first of all, go through counseling before we can decide what it is that you can, And one of the pieces of our affordability for our program is that we don't qualify people for loan amounts. We determine how much you can buy based off of affordability. And while we cancel people, sometimes we find out that it's very difficult to actually buy something that you're looking for because affordability is what streamlines how much you can purchase. So that is one of the unique things about the NACA program. It's not centered on you come to us, we give you a loan amount that you can go. We welcome grants to help. And at this moment, that's one of the things that I'm really trying to source out. In other words, have as many grants as possible that can help these homeowners to be able to purchase homes. Then we have the hot PHA, which is another thing. I mentioned this earlier, the Section 8 program, for example. we're trying to see if we can get California as a state to phase out just handing off Section 8 programs. I mean, I've seen this work in several states because one of the beautiful things is that this company is everywhere. So we have seen Section 8 work in New York, especially, where they're using the Section 8 vouchers, the housing vouchers, to help phase out homelessness in the state. If we can allow, because the California vouchers allow them for at least 30 years. We want to welcome it in. We want to be able to even go beyond the acquisition costs that we have at the moment set in the system for us to help the people that have Section 8s, if we can get them to be phased out to home vouchers. So that way we can help them get homes, phase them out of the program, and then the monies can be available for other people. I literally had a lady call me the other day who told me she's been in Section 8 for the past 22 years. It really pissed me off. Because that my thing is, at 22 years, you shouldn't be renting a property. If you're already spending that for 22 years, you should have at least be finishing up with purchasing your home, which is one of the things that the HOT PHA does. Try to square the funds in, phase them out sooner than 30 years. We allow 30 years, but we can also do the 68 to 32%, where 68 goes to the mortgage, 32 goes to pay it off faster. So that way they can pay off the mortgage faster and be out of the program. So that's what the HOT PHA does. But we also have room to allow it to just be the regular 30-year program. And then we have the $1 program. So this $1 purchase program is where we want the city to help. If you have those properties that have not lands, empty lands, or properties that have been reconfiscated for one reason or the other, and some neighborhoods where there's nothing going on with those properties, NACA wants to come in, if invited, if we have partnership with the developers and stuff, to build up those neighborhoods and put them back for the low to moderate income people to buy at the market rate. Because one of the problems we're having is that the house prices are so high. It's making it difficult for people to find anything. And some of these properties are not even at the market rates where they can be. So one of the things we're trying to do is to bring in the $1 program. Get the lands for $1, fix them, rebuild them, and give them back to the people in the community to purchase. Help with developing the neighborhoods. So the funding we don't have a problem about. The problem we have is that we don't have the lands to do that. So that's one of the things that NACA wants to do to help with neighborhoods. So we also do the rehab program. For the ones that already own properties, over the years want to do some work on their properties, they can come back and we can help them with the rehabbing of their properties. Within the 110% of the appraised value of the property, we work out something to be able to have the loans for the rehab and still have it funded into their mortgage. Then we do have, I mentioned this earlier, the homeowners assistance. So for those ones, NACA, one of the primary things that NACA does is to advocate for people in the community. And most of us, that's what we do. Sometimes we get very aggressive about it. So if you do see some of our campaigns, we can be a tad bit aggressive from the CEO downward. So don't laugh at us, but that's what we do. So one of it is to help people that have mortgages that are not, that just don't make sense, that they can't pay for it. So one of the things we do is that we help them. We advocate for them with whoever their lender is to bring those mortgages down for them. And we do offer the refinance and the rehab mortgages for our members as well. And we talked about the helping with the $1 program. That in itself is something that I want to see come to California. I'm seeing it work beautifully in Maryland for us right now. And going different places to see if we can get that program into California. Because if we can get affordable homes out there, it will bring down the prices of these homes, because then it means there's some properties in the market. Sellers are having the whole say right now because there are no properties out there. So if we can bring that in, it would really help. Any questions for me?
Sharon, thank you so much for being here. I just want to make sure that we don't have any comments from the public before we turn to our task force members. Okay, thank you so much. So yes, anybody have any questions? Stephen, you have a question?
Yeah, I actually want to offer a comment is that we've recently had a report at Cal HFA about a number of the programs that are being offered there. And I just have to commend the entire network of HUD certified counseling organizations for being the implementers. None of this can work. None of these great state programs, which come and go, ebb and flow. And we expect organizations like yours to be there year after year with connections to the community. That's very valuable. And the creativity that you offer, that you bring a different set of eyes into this housing ecosystem is really important. And so I just want to speak to that, the support for what you're doing, and commend you for the really amazing work that you allow these other large programs to actually work in the community. So thank you for that work.
Absolutely. Any other questions, comments?
So we do have, are you waving yourself off? You have to. Do you have time to speak?
For a little bit, I can speak maybe 5, 6 minutes.
The rest of us need to go too. So Juanita was one of our speakers too. Oh, yeah, she just didn't come up. Juanita will just talk briefly about how she's responsible for bringing that up.
Did you want to do any comments now?
I can just, I had a PowerPoint, but at this point,
Oh.
I guess the best way to do it is just I'm with the San Diego Housing Commission, by the way. I
And,
work,
talking to the mic so the people can hear you. That
my voice is pretty loud, but okay.
But they need to hear you in the recording, though.
Okay. So I'm with the San Diego Housing Commission. I'm one of the work readiness specialists that assists with the Achievement Academy. For those of you that know, we are the support services arm of the San Diego Housing Commission. And so within our department, there are there's 8 of us that have different specialties. Mine is in finance. So I do all the financial literacy. I create all the programs that are within the financial literacy department. And so one of the things I've done is create a home buying prep program, which allows us to qualify clients to become home buying ready. And we use basic 6 eligibility point movements to get our clients approved, or at least home buying ready to acquire any of the programs that are within the system. Now, a year ago, the eligibility points were right on and spot on. Now, these eligibility points are only there to assist our clients and get them ready to become home buying further down the line when things change with the economy. So the 6 eligibility points were $65,000 of income annually, 650 to 680 credit score, 2 years of employment, 2 years of income tax returns, $10,000 of savings, and $100 or less of debt. And so the way we do that is in a 3-phase program, which is the first active phase, which allows us to see that if we have those 6 eligibility points by running a credit report, by reviewing the credit report, we then enroll the clients into the program, and then we start to work on all the eligibility points that they need. If they need to increase their income, we give them trainings in any kind of workforce development to help them bring up their credit score or bring up their income. Or we work with credit building loans, debt reduction products, and we also meet with a number of our other clients around the table here to help them build up their credit score. We also help them with our program. What we have is called FSS, Family Self-Sufficiency Program, which has the $10,000 escrow fund that they're able to build on over a 2-year period, right? And so within the 3 phases, there's the eligibility, the active list of clients. It's the current list of clients, the ones that are ready to go. And then we have a long-term list of clients that we work with. Within that whole group, what we're doing is then sending them to the 8-hour workshop for them to be able to get the resources for down payment assistance, right? And within all of that, we're also offering other resources, other ways for them to become home buying ready within this whole phase of processes. NACA is one of the programs that I've seen that allows our clients to have more buying power. Currently, we're at 7.1% interest rate nationally. They're at 6%. That's their current interest rate. and they're able to buy down some of these loans. So using some of our down payment assistance programs, we could probably buy down some of the interest rates and allow them to have a better buying product or more buying power, to say. So for example, right now when I qualify a client at $65,000, a year ago they used to be able to buy a $450,000 home if they had no debt. Now it's at $235,000, $250,000, I believe. And so what is going on is that even with our down payment assistance program with the Housing Commission, if they're not at the 80% AMI, they're not qualifying for the 20% down payment assistance program. But if we're able to get them the $10,000 closing costs, right? Get that to buy down the loan or the interest rate a bit, and then get them a lower interest rate. They're making the $65,000. They have the low debt. They're able to then be more apt to purchase a home in our area. And so I'm really happy with the fact that we're partnering, we're working with them. They're trying to become lenders, one of our approved lenders right now. And so we're trying to get that done through our home buying products or home buying team. If we can get that done, then we'll be able to help more clients become home buyers and not just home buying ready, which is where we've been right now. So that was a fast track of what we do. I'm a HUD financial counselor, HUD certified financial counselor, by the way. And so I oversee all of the financial literacy programs in our agency, and I create these programs. And with the help of Sergio and a couple of others, we do some really great work to help our clients move forward. This year alone, we've got 65 clients that are already ready to go at these eligibility points. And some of them are making more, like $120,000 a year. The problem is there's no product. So we have them waiting and building and waiting and building. So that's where we are. But we do the financial counseling. We run credit reports, and we review their credit reports. And we then talk to them about how do you reduce your overall debt? How do you increase your FICO score? How do you increase your income? So that's kind of what we do in our department.
Well, thank you very much for being here. I do have a question. It's really good to hear about the programs, and I know there are a lot of community partners that expose people to these programs, but what is that onboarding process like? If I've never heard of the San Diego Housing Commission, or I've never heard of NACA, how am I able to hear about the programs, and then how am I able to become a member or a client?
With the San Diego Housing Commission, you have the ability to look on our website. Under the Achievement Academy, you're going to find a calendar. In that calendar are all the workshops that we do, including the first-time homebuyer workshops. In there is also an application that allows our clients to, or even because we're an Envision Center as well, we're able to assist individuals that are within the Promise Zone. And we help basically anyone that is coming over when it comes to the home buying process. And so once they enroll with us, they are assigned to one of the work readiness specialists like myself. We review the credit report once we do the credit authorization form. And then at that point, we determine if they are eligible to move towards the first, second, or third phase of the process. And then we start working with them one-on-one. Once they are moving towards their home buying eligibility points, when they're at that 6, we send them to the 8-hour workshop, and then we start referring them to all the resources that are out there. Because most of the resources that are out there, for example, NACA has their own lenders. We have Cal HAFA that has their own lenders. The city of San Diego has their own lenders. And so we are versed in understanding all of the different lenders that are out there and how to best assist our clients. We're not just trying to get them to enroll in the San Diego Housing Commission's programs, but what's the best program for them?
Sharon, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, for NACA, we do workshops. I'll put up the page of the workshop out there. So people do come in for the workshop. The workshop actually stands for that 8-hour counseling that they're supposed to go for. We go through that workshop. So what we do is that we we started having face-to-face workshops, where people can come in and go through the program, know what the program is all about, get their certificate of counsel, going through that workshop. And then they can actually just call in, because when they get their NACA IDs, they can always call in and have a counselor meet with them. So it's really not and if they're ready, we qualify them. If they're not ready, we prep them for what they need to do to get ready to be able to purchase a home. And some of them would also have to go through saving, to actually cut down some expenses. We kind of train them on how to do their budgeting, how to cut down a little bit and be able to save more. And one of the things that I love about the program is that some people don't end up buying with us because maybe they didn't find anything they can afford, but they always come back and, say something nice about how they learned to save their monies, how they learned to cut down on a lot of things that they never thought they could cut down on in their life, and they would never have been able to make it work. So yes, we do. That's how we do, get them. And also for the rate on our website, it's usually 1% less for the priority members. So if it is 6% today, it's 5% for the priority members in that program.
Okay. If we have no other questions or comments, thank you again for being here with us and for sharing all of this information. That is the last item on our agenda today, so thank everyone for your participation. Congratulations to us for being back in person. With that, we are adjourned at 3:56 p.m. Thank you.